I'm Putrid, and this is what I do. If you can see in the background here, it's just a lot of the works I like to do. I hang every time I finish a piece, I just hang it up here. It's kind of just like a serial killer wall. And this is my studio, and this is where I spend most of my time. I try to spend most of my time here. Yeah, I've been doing this since, let's see, '03 was my first job, working for a skateboard company, Anti-Hero Skateboards. Actually, it was Real, which is under the Deluxe umbrella there, and then I got into doing a lot of stuff with Anti-Hero, and that was cool. That was a good jumping off point because I grew up skateboarding, and was what I was, super into, especially at that time. And then, as I got older, my body deteriorated. I got way more into the art thing. So then I really doubled down with all this shit. But I really liked doing the skateboarding stuff because I knew that was going to get me into working for metal bands. And I grew up a big death metal guy. When I moved to Chicago in '04, I just had this, I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but I just knew at that point I wanted to, pursue art. I had taken at that point like a 6-month, I just paid not that much money for like a 6-month drawing and painting course. I didn't take much from that except that it just, I don't know, it kind of just, for me, it was kind of a linchpin, and it really started to take it seriously. So, moved to Chicago, and I'd done enough skateboarding stuff where I was like, okay, I got, did enough with that, and I thought I had enough of a body of work. So, I, compiled enough work to where I thought it would be good for a portfolio, and then I got a really crappy website set up through some kid. I was a kid too, just some kid who had a rough grasp of graphic design and web design and all that. So I just handed out these flyers here. Made these guys up, and I mean, pretty self-explanatory. It's just a blob of gore and rotten ghouls devour human bodies. See, undead chainsaw, horror decapitations, beautiful women get naked and butchered. So I played off the whole horror movie, like the ballyhoo of like an old horror movie. But yeah, obviously you can see just the level of artwork is just primitive at best. But for the bands, the like old school death metal bands and the grind bands, I kind of wanted to do stuff for. I mean, if they didn't get turned on by that, then I'm like, all right, yeah. I didn't know what would do it for them, but I also knew because I followed all the bands and the artists, and I just knew, what they were gonna like. And then from that, I worked with this grind band, Pleurosis from Wisconsin, and then Cardiac Arrest, who are still going to this day and just killing it. I mean, they're doing, they're still, they're heavy and heavier than harder than ever. But that was their first, their debut album cover I did for them. So I'm not sure which came first, if it was the Wisconsin band or Chicago band, but it was one after the other. And then after that, I don't know. I got lucky. I didn't really have to hand out too many more of those flyers. Word just caught on, and I just started doing one after the other, and then, eventually got to the point where I was just working with like Impetigo, Cyanide, Hooded Menace, Razorback Records. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Razorback Records. Billy was huge. Billy Nocera was huge for me because he started getting me because they were a pretty popular label at that time with Frightmare, Blood Freak, Mashitazo, Catasexual Urge Motivation. I mean, there was a lot of Gorged, obviously, Paled, the list goes on. And I loved all that stuff. I mean, I loved that Razorback was a marriage of horror and and death metal. Yeah, just seamlessly stitched together. So yeah, he was huge for me in getting me to where I am. But yeah, from there, just things took off, and God, I'm here now, 15, 16 years later, doing the exact same thing, but it's not old because there's always something new to do. There's always a bigger, better project to do. Not in terms of stepping up the ladder. I'm still working with basically the same bands, and still some of the older bands that I worked with, so long ago. Yeah, and I'm not going to stop. I'm in this for the long term here. This is just, this is the career that I want. This is my dungeon of death here. This is my torture chamber. I love this room. This is something I've worked for since I was 12 years old. And because at that time, the only foresight into life that I ever had was that the mom and pop video store was gonna go. It was even in, I think, when I started collecting, which was about 98. I was 14, and there was this guy Pete that lived in the neighborhood in Louisville, Colorado, and he would buy up like video stores that were going out of business, record stores, and he lived in an old church. And once a time in the summer, he would set up and he would open it to like the neighborhood, and he would advertise it. And this was, this was pre-internet, so there would just be signs, because his house was leading into the downtown area. So the word would get out there that there was going to be a big, like movie and record, and he had all kinds of stuff. He basically just bought any kind of stuff he thought the area would like, and you would just show up for like, it was like about a weekend or so. And I was skating through, going to downtown because that's where we like to roll around, and I saw that the doors were open. There was a bunch of movies, and I've always been a movie fan. I mean, it was always really horror, but any movies. And I just saw movies, so I was like, okay, cool, I'll go in and check it out. And I was 14, so I think I was like on an allowance, because I know I had, it's like 15 or 20 bucks with me, and movies were $1 at that point, which was awesome. Those days are no longer. And so yeah, I got 14 movies. I remember it being 14. I don't know, maybe I kept the rest of the dollars for some like zebra cakes and some Mountain Dew or whatever, because that's what I existed on skating at that time. But yeah, I mean, one off the bat was I got my copy, my Thorny and my copy of Dawn of the Dead, which after that, for some reason, the Thorny and my label really resonated with me. I tried to get as many of those as possible, but this was a huge one for me. This one actually was, yeah, same copy, and when I was 14, I wasn't allowed to watch these movies, but after my parents went to bed, I figured out many tactics and, when to sneak these, but this one blew my mind the most, which makes sense, obviously, the movie, and at 14, especially after getting it underneath your parents' nose and then watching it underneath that, and none of your friends know anything about that shit, right? Yeah. This one was special. Return of the Aliens Deadly Spawn, which for years I was like, wow, cool, I can't wait to see the Deadly Spawn. And I got the Deadly Spawn and I was like, oh, it's the exact same fucking movie. But whatever, I mean, it's one of my favorite movies to this day. Actually, this is my copy. Signed by To Putrid by Doug McCohen. Best wishes. Yeah, I had to have the director. When I finally got to meet him, that was a very special moment. And got my copy signed. Because, again, this one and Reanimator and Dawn of the Dead were huge. Halloween, loved it. Didn't love it as much as monsters and zombies. It was the monsters and the zombies that really did it for me. So I would say those are, of all the titles I got when I was 14, those were the highlights there. But then from there, I worked at I got a little bit older, and one of my first jobs, I worked at a Suncoast Video. And that's when DVDs started getting in big, but at that point, I mean, I'm a Luddite. It takes me a long time to catch up to the latest thing. So I was still collecting, and I was driving around Colorado. I had got my fucking driver's license when I was, I don't know, 16 or 17. And I was going around Colorado, and I was just buying up every place that I could. So I would say when I moved out here in 03, I spent the better part of 3 years working at the video store and a barbecue joint, basically just making money solely to just buy this. And that's where I got the bulk of my collection. Coming out to Chicago, I bled a few places dry in the early 2000s because there was still a couple places. But yeah, and then things got huge. You know, my buddy Matt Moore and the Horror Hound articles that were like, you know, every issue had a feature on every, you know, Wizard, you know, Thorn AMI, Comet, you know, United, you name it, Super Video, Midnight Video, obviously, Camp Video, that was a good one too. And then it got super popular, and then titles started just skyrocketing. Christ. You know, I started wanting to make a living as an artist at that point, and that was the death knell for me. I couldn't keep up with, you know, because it was getting $25 for like a filler type. So yeah, I just, like, the people at the time forgot I'm not spending $25 on this. Yeah, so that I just had to stop for the better part, but I don't know. I feel like I carved out my little niche. I started the story with saying that when I was 12 years old, the only foresight I had was that I knew that this was going to die. And all I wanted, I'm not making this up to be like dramatically cool or anything. I really wanted to just have, when I was older, which is fucked up, because I'm like 36 now, and I'm probably at that age, I'm, you know, middle-aged. You know, so basically I'm where I was when I was 12, and I did what I wanted to do. So that's cool. Like, I really feel like that's with life. This was something it was a goal, and I did it. I achieved it. I never became a professional skateboarder. I'm barely holding on to being a working artist. But this, you know, this was accomplished. So, that's it. Check off the bucket list for real. So it's pretty cool. I mean, there's a fucking 1,000 other guys that have way better collections than me. My buddy Matt Desidores in New York just annihilates this, but you know, like I said, I kind of did my job. You know, accomplished my goal. That's what I wanted to do. So, you know, I think that this is you know, still important and just okay, it's not a valid form of media, but why I keep this still, you know, why don't I sell it off, why don't I, you know, it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just like a thing that I just collected to just, you know, try to turn a buck on down the line. It was, I mean, again, going back, when I was 12, I wanted to accomplish this goal. I wanted to know that when the end times, you know, were nigh with VHS, that I was going to be able to have this little nostalgia, this little pocket, you know. And boy, it really is a little pocket here in my house, because I just remember, I mean, I had a really, really good childhood, but I don't know why, as soon as I was in this video store, I could just go to another place. It wasn't like I was trying to escape from anything, but I would just sit cross-legged, and I would just pick out every box, you know, and you're just like, you see the spine, and the spine is fucking cool. And then you just look at Extra, and you're like, what? And you're like, oh, yeah, that's fucking incredible. Actually, next to Extra is this. The Being. I was big into monster movies. So when I see just some mutant carrying some bloody corpse, that was huge. Because at this point, we also had a King Supers, which is like the Jewel equivalent for the you know, Chicago area, Midwest. But they at that time they still had some pretty obscure movies. The Being was big for me. I always wanted to see that. Alligator. I mean, I always liked the monsters, you know, killer animals, monsters, wherever it was. You take an animal, you just enlarge it, you know, 10 times. And this one I always liked because you're like, man, we're usually up there, you know, it could be a giant fucking alligator that's gonna eat us. And if you see the movie, this is gold right there. That's amazing stuff right there. Yeah, another. Oh, here we go. So, Toxic Zombies. This specific tape actually meant a lot to me because when I was collecting, I had a real. Even when I got a little bit indentured and I kind of knew what was going on and what was out there and what I needed, this one was super hard to find. But my local video store, which was Video Station, which is one of the biggest video stores in the country, I think at the time, in Boulder, Colorado, Video Station. It was huge. It was three stories, and it had everything. But they wouldn't sell me this. And eventually, when their days were numbered, I specifically went up to the dude. He's like, I wouldn't sell this to anyone but you. And I got it for $20, which was so cool. I love this movie. I got turned on that by a Mortician song with his "See Blood Eaters, Bloodthirsty Bastards from Beyond." I mean, that was the most salacious fucking trailer too. I love everything about this movie. So this one's really special to me, and it's in really good condition. So yeah, that one means a lot to me right there. But all right, the one not so obscure or special, but I just gotta bring it out to my original tape. Was Creepshow. Always has been, always will be one of my favorite movies of all time. But when I was a kid, I just had a thing with things with skeletons with one eye. This was, yeah, to this day, I mean, I looked at this thing, I mean, it just looked, you know, it looked like it's stained in coffee. I always wanted to see this. I mean, this was always one of my favorite movies, and I mean, this one, it was the cover, it was the first time I ever watched it. This was the full experience, you know. If you're into this sort of stuff like I am, you know, it doesn't really always end up, the cover art never really ends up the way you want it to. But this is one of those sort of rare times that, you know, everything panned out to be amazing. So yeah, that one was special for me. So I feel like if I'm going to talk about, you know, my collection, as much as all the legitimate titles are concerned, yeah, that's all awesome. That's good stuff. But, I mean, the bootleg stuff really was integral and is a huge part in any VHS lover's lifetime. And what I'd like to say is that this stack here was really sexy for the time because, well, I got this from an older guy later down the line, but there were still some of these titles that I wasn't able to get and that were not released. And there was a lot of that like Asian gore stuff. Revenge of the Zombies. There was fucking Devil Fetus there. Black Magic Terror. And what was so cool about these is you just didn't really know what you were gonna get, and they were just, this Cruel Jaws. Before, this was the Bruno Mattei like Jaws ripoff. That's all you got. You just got the spine. You hope that it's a good enough version of that, but at the same time, you didn't care because it's all you had. So, just getting that would be really fun. And in the early 2000s, in 2001, I took a Greyhound bus to Milwaukee Metal Fest, and I met who's still a good friend of mine, Jill, who does now Jill Licks Online, but at the time she did bootleg, like obscure, but the hits. But this was the only way you could get them here. So Della Morte Della More, Zombie 3, and then you get the extended version of Dawn of the Dead at the time. Street Trash. I'll never forget getting to the Metal Fest and being like, thinking I was going to get CDs of, bands, but then I didn't also know that there would be any horror fans there. Because still at that time, I didn't know that many. All of my metalhead friends weren't as big into horror as I was. And then got into some weird shit, like discovered Olaf Ittenbach for the first time with Black Past, Anthropophagus, Aftermath was fucking crazy. I mean, obviously, that shit was nuts. Necromantic. And then, I remember just when you heard that there was an uncut version of Friday the 13th. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. And then probably the two that made the biggest impact on me out there was Cannibal Holocaust and Brain Dead. So those were just huge. I mean, paramount scores for me at that time, because I finally got to see those movies that I'd actually heard so much about. And just to talk about these right now, these are the cut boxes, which unfortunately, they're a lesser class. They don't get put in with the actual collection, but I still hold on to some of them because I don't have good versions of that. I just don't know why. I haven't never rebought Stephen King's The Night Flyer, but every once in a while, I'll put these guys on. And I love Run Angel Run. I should probably get a fucking better version of this, but I'll still come back to these every once in a while. So, and also I just feel bad throwing them away. Everything's got a little space here, but I just even keep these around just for the titles. The Slasher is a Sex Maniac, Woman Hunt, Black Magic, Living Skeleton, Cannibal Girls. Actually, this Cannibal Girls tape here, this guy was great, because he would bootleg titles, and he would spend a lot of time in drawing on the spines the exact logo of the actual movie. Like, he would look at the poster art, and he would come up with, like, this Malpertius, this Revenge of the Zombies there, Cannibal Girls. I can always tell it was John, god dang it, I'm beer brain in his last name. He's a recluse, so it wouldn't be like you could... John? God. I'm fucking that up right there. But, so some of these bootlegger guys were very cool because they would put their own spin on things. Yeah, the Black Magic Terror, and that's it as well. There was like an individuality with some of the bootleggers that were, made some of the titles a little bit more sexy and fun and interesting. And so, Van Ron's Previews from Hell was, and I guess what I'm trying to get into is part of the fun with the tapes, where you just never knew what you're gonna get. You could see the spine, but the spines were usually pretty safe. A lot of movie stores had them to face outward, so they'd get they would just get sun bleached. You could just really beat the hell out of these things. But I'll never forget Mad Ron's Previews from Hell. I saw this behind the girl that I had hung out with that night, which I was like trying to get sweet on, and failing miserably because I was like fucking 23 and just pathetic. And I saw this behind her, and I pushed her. I literally pushed her out of the fucking way. It's just like, just hoisted her out of the way to get to that. But I knew this was one of the last tapes where I remember seeing the spine and being like, come on, when I pulled it out, like hoping the colors and the condition was going to be there. And then I pulled it out, and it was just exquisite. I mean, this is immaculate. This was just really great. There's just, you know what you're getting when you're getting a Blu-ray or DVD. The condition will be there. It'll be there one way or the other. It's going to be fine. It's going to be, it's there. The content's there. Collecting VHS was, you didn't know what you were going to get. And you could go through this 3 or 4 times before you found a copy that you actually, felt worthy to put into your collection. So those little moments were huge. Whereas, collecting a lot of other things, if you find it, you find it, and that's cool. But just finding it was hard enough, and then having to just pull it out, and have it, match up to what you were hoping for, it was rare. And if it did, then you were on cloud 9. I mean, when I was in this, God, I miss it because I just can't really do it anymore. And what I like to do is travel around and
and find it. You would have to find it. I mean, you would have to go to the suburbs. You would have to go to, you know, unpopulated areas to be able to find that mom and pop store that there weren't any, like, you know, kids around there that were into the same thing. And, you know, and try to just... There was like a rape, pillage, and burn pirate aspect to it sometimes. You go out with your friends, you know, and you would have just a certain chunk of money, and, you know, you don't know what you're going to find going out to, you know, Barrington or Joliet or, you know, wherever you were going to head to. You usually wanted to go to the shittier areas because, yeah, they'd have really good titles, trying to sell it to scumbags. So they would have good stuff. Yeah. So it's special, man. And there's nothing, you know, there's really nothing that close to it. As far as I know.